All right, guys, it is 12:01, so we're going to go ahead and start this webinar on the most valuable Google AdWords features for the PPC account manager. This webinar is being hosted by AdStage and Hanapin Marketing. So your presenters today are Mike McEwen. He's the Director of Demand Generation over at AdStage, and his Twitter handle is listed if you'd like to tweet at him or start following him. And I am Amanda Westbrook-Walter, Senior Account Manager at Hanapin Marketing. And there is my Twitter handle, which you can feel free to follow or tweet at me. If you want to join the conversation in general, you can go ahead and use the hashtag ThinkPPC in your tweets. You can also use the webinar question box to send us questions throughout the webinar. We will have a live question and answer session towards the end of the webinar, so stick around and keep sending us questions throughout. We're going to go ahead and do a live poll just so we can kind of see who all is listening and what kind of audience we have. We just want to know how long you've been in PPC. So if you want to go ahead and select either less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or 5+ years. Mike, which one do you fall into?
So I hate to date myself, Amanda, but I actually fall into the 5-year+ category. It was after the release of Quality Score for Google AdWords, but I've been here for about 7 years. Yourself?
I would be in the 3 to 5. I've been here for about 4.5 years here at Hanapin and did more of the back-end business stuff in an e-commerce company beforehand. So a little less than you, but I think that 3 to 5 is a pretty typical time range considering how young the industry is. I know at the last Hero Conf in Portland when I saw people standing up saying that they'd been in it for 15 years or more, kind of blew me away that they even had anything to do 15 years ago.
Absolutely.
All right, so it looks like most of you are with Mike on the 5+ years, followed by less than 1 year and 1 to 3 years, and I guess I'm in the minority today, so that's fun. So one more question before we really get started into the content. How do you manage your PPC accounts? Again, just trying to get to know our audience. We can kind of cater what we're talking about to you. If we know that everybody here is super expensive or experienced, we might just skip over the really easy peasy stuff. So if you'll just let us know if you're part of an in-house team, you do all of the marketing, including PPC, you work for an agency or you're a consultant. Of course, I work for an agency, and that's really the only experience that I have. What about you, Mike?
I have an agency background, but today we have a huge team of 2 members. So I would say I'm the very first one, part of an in-house PPC team.
Very interesting. Let's see what everybody else is. Mike, you're really just kind of leading the front here with popularity. So working for an agency seems to be the second with 28%, followed by I do all the marketing including PPC, and I'm a consultant with 12%. Very interesting mix here today. Awesome. So let's go ahead and get started with number 10. Mike, take it away.
Thank you so much, Amanda. So for those of you who probably read some of Amanda's great articles, not only does she actively manage accounts, she blogs, she webinars, and she's a super mom for toddlers. So for her to even carve out time to speak with us today, I feel very honored and humbled. So thank you, Amanda, for having me along for this ride. In regards to kind of your top 10 features to look at when you're managing accounts from an agency or account manager perspective, I think, as much as most people know this one, the search query reports for me is kind of your baseline. So once you actually launch your account, actually taking a look on when you have things like broad match modifiers, what are the actual searches that are being matched to that. So many of you might know when you go into that ad group layer, you pull down that details tab and you go to search terms all, it will reveal to you some of what you're actually being paired with. So Amanda, if you don't mind, we can go on the next one and reveal what it is. So for example, here I was bidding with broad match modifiers on Facebook ads tool. AdStage is a PPC platform, and we cover Facebook as well. So we want to cater to some of that traffic. What I actually found when I pulled the search query report is we were getting people who were looking for the Facebook ad grid tool. So people who wanted to see if their ads had over 20% text and if they'd get flagged or not. So this is obviously not relevant traffic. This is traffic I was actively paying for, and my CEO probably wouldn't be too happy. So in this case, I can actually clean up my account and put these as negative terms to make sure I don't show up for them in the future. But if we go on to the next slide, another great way to use search query reports is to actually mine it for additional opportunities. So in this case, when I was looking at my account, I also noticed that a lot of people were looking for alternatives to kind of Facebook ad editors. So there's the native version, and maybe they were looking for a PMD or a third party. So in this case, I did see, if you look on the right-hand corner column there at the converted clicks, I did receive a conversion for Facebook ad editor. So this showed me that there's a greater opportunity for me to expand. Other than just adding that keyword to my portfolio, a smarter way to go about it would actually break it out into its own ad group, add that keyword with a few other keywords that are very closely related to Facebook Ads Editor, and create new ad copy there. So that's a great way for you to expand your opportunities for more conversion. Going on to number 9, ad extensions. This also seems like a pretty base layer, but a lot of people don't fully utilize all the ad extensions. So when you are actually creating your ad copy, so by the time you've done your campaign structure, your bid types, your keyword selection, and you get down to the ad copy, most people are quite worn out, and ad extensions often are an afterthought. So sometimes it's good to go back in there and really kind of flush them out. As you can see here, this is actually for a brand term, so competitors are constantly trying to bid on our brand. But by adding some rich ad extensions here, I'm able to cover more real estate, make it more relevant to my audience, and it gives me a lot more area for my calls to action. So just looking at this ad copy alone, you can see that we're using that fairly new call extension where it acts as an additional line, and you see that red arrow pointing to it. In addition to that, I have my site links, and not only just revealing site links, but below taking full advantage of that description area as well to fully flush out your copy. And that should increase click-through rate overall, and it should help in decreasing your average cost per click. Next one, please. So not only should you think about it from your overall ads, but you should also look at it from the perspective of mobile. Mobile's a little bit different in that there's only 2 above the fold. Most people aren't going to do as much kind of in-depth research. They're looking for quick navigation, straight to the point copy. And so with that, you want to start thinking about how you're going to cater your actual ad extensions to mobile specifically. So in there, with your extensions, you do have the option to choose it specifically for mobile devices and cater that different than desktop and tablet. And so where those are really great is, especially from an agency perspective, if you have any local players like service businesses, that's when you're starting to do things like click to call, especially for like emergency services, or use some of those call extensions or location extensions to make it a lot more relevant. So you can see below for like a restaurant, for example, in that you can give them directions that they can click with one click, or they can call that business and have a reservation. And on to number 8, ad rotation based on your ad rotation and bid settings. Regarding your ad rotation, when you're looking at kind of your guiding principle, I have these here. They're not what I'd say set in stone. These are just general rules that I kind of apply by, but there's always edge cases. There's always different ways to use it. But when you're looking at your ad copy overall, you want to make sure that it's catered to your end goals. So at first, you might just optimize the clicks because you don't have enough actionable data. But then as you get more data and understand how your landing pages are converting, and then you might do something like A/B test. So when you're introducing new ad copy to where you have existing one, if you're doing optimize to clicks, AdWords obviously often will not give that new ad copy a fair shake. So to make sure that you can do a true A/B test or just see how it does in the wild compared to other ad copies, you might do something like rotate evenly. And rotate evenly is if you're kind of putting an autopilot. You don't really plan to check back on it, and you want Google to kind of determine the winner after 90 days. If you're much more kind of detail-oriented and you know you're going to check in on maybe a week or two, then you can say rotate indefinitely, and then you might have that calendar reminder internally to go back and check on it. But finally, you really want, once you have a good bevy of data, once you have enough conversions where the account is actionable, you may want to explore optimize for conversions, and I'll show you why in this next slide, why sometimes it's the better choice. So when you're looking at your ad rotation options, you can see here my top ad copy actually has a higher click-through rate at 15%, where my bottom copy is just shy of 14%. So if I'm only looking to optimize towards click-through rate or total clicks, that top ad copy may seem like the winner. But as the experiment goes on, I'm actually understanding that I'm getting a better conversion rate and a lower cost per converted click from the bottom ad copy. So when I look at my ad rotations, if I place it on optimized conversions, it's going to select that bottom ad copy and show that more prevalent, and that will result in more conversion. And now on to number 7, exclusion targeting on GDN. So many of you, as much as we talk about AdWords, a lot of times it's more catered to search, but there's a huge opportunity in display as well, whether you're doing remarketing or whether you're trying to find brand new traffic. One of those pieces is actually showing for mobile ads. So unless you're doing a mobile ad install ad or an engagement ad, a lot of the times mobile apps are not where you want to show. Those are accidental clicks a lot of times because they're interstitial within that app environment. So you may have an app looking at your favorite restaurants or something like that and accidentally click on an ad. You're paying for that. So a lot of times you just want to take a look at your placement. So if you go to that Display Network tab, you navigate to placements, it will show you all the websites. And that's where you can either exclude particular websites that are not relevant, or in the case of mobile apps, I'll show you in the next slide how to exclude them from your entire campaign. So in here, you want to take a look at something like categories, and then you can see areas like mobile apps in the experimental area, and I will switch those off. But the absolute definitive way to clean it out of your account is to add it as a negative placement, so AdSense for mobileapps.com, and that will make sure that I don't show any app environment that's going to be true display. I think something else that's very relevant in that area as well is you do have the options to only show above the fold as well, and that's also something I highly recommend you checking out when you're looking at placement. On to number 6. Labels. So I always tell someone that is brand new to PPC and I'm taking them through to marketing, like label like a librarian is my favorite kind of term. So with that, when I'm looking at making labels, labels are a great way for you to do a couple of things. So first is to keep the account very clean. You can get filtered views based on labels. And also, it's a great way for you, and I'll show you in the next slide, how to run some experiments as well. So you have your labels set, and you may do things like brand versus non-brand. One of my favorite uses of labels is for e-commerce. So whether you're going after different geographies, or if you're running some text ads versus some Google shopping campaigns, and you might be aligning it to different stages of the funnel, put labels over that so you get very filtered reporting. As you can see here, you can select this particular label, and then you can get kind of a subtotal, and it's a great way for you to get a quick in-depth insight into how things are performing. And if we go on to the next slide, one of my favorite use cases for labels as well is to assign auto rules. In this case, we are running something like an e-commerce campaign where I have particular holiday keywords or holiday ads that I want to pause after like December, for example, after the main holiday. So I can set an auto rule based on my label to do that for me, and it really helps kind of with efficiency and time management. So now that we've covered labels, I'll go on to number 5.
Yeah, so number 5 is auction insights. I think auction insights are really helpful in kind of digging in and seeing where you are showing compared to your competitors, and it's also something that really impresses clients and bosses. So it's another plus for auction insights. Here, I just pulled an example here of what an auction insights report looks like for a set of keywords. You see the impression share, the average position, the overlap rate, position above rate, and top of page rate against like specific competitors for whatever date range that you pick. Really cool thing about auction insights is that you can segment by device or time period. So time period segmentation will help you see how competitors are changing over time in their aggressiveness on your specific keyword set, or how maybe you're falling off because of decreasing bids or whatever strategy you're working on. I think the device segmentation is a really cool feature because you can see an aggregate in the standard reporting, but if you segment, you might see kind of a different story than you see at the very top level. So for instance here, at the top level, it looks like you have a higher impression share than your competitor, but if you segment by device, you can actually see that they're beating you on mobile. And if you have a lot of mobile traffic, that could be important to you, so definitely check that out too. Another really cool thing you can do with the data that you get from Auction Insights is an outrank bid strategy. So this is something I've used before when I had a client where their competitor was really targeting their branded terms, which was getting really aggressive and really starting to eat our branded impression share. So we went in and set a bid strategy to target outranking share by 100% with no max CPC. I think we ran this probably for a month or so until they realized that they weren't making any money on it and just bidding a lot of money on it and stopped bidding on our branded terms. So it's a really interesting strategy to implement based on your Auction Insights data. And real quick, we're going to do a live question. So if you guys can just tweet this with hashtag ThinkPPC or just use the webinar question box, we'll get back to your answer toward the end of the webinar. But what Google AdWords feature do you consider most valuable? And it definitely doesn't have to be one that we've covered yet. So just whatever you find most valuable, we really want to hear your guys' opinion too. Number 4 is dynamic search ads. So dynamic search ads can be used in a couple of different ways. I think the biggest way is as a keyword mining tool. So obviously you want to always be looking for new keywords, and standard keyword research and search query reports in standard search campaigns is kind of the traditional way of doing it. But having a dynamic search campaign where you have all of your targeted keywords that are elsewhere in the account set as embedded negatives can help find keywords on your website that people are searching for but you're not targeting yet. And obviously this can be dangerous if you put a big budget on it. It turns out to be a lot of unqualified stuff, but it can really help you build out your keyword portfolio. So I definitely think every account should have one.
Amanda, I actually had a question there. So how often, when you start an experiment with dynamic search ads, how often do you kind of let it run? Does it depend on the client, or do you have kind of a certain strategy, like 7 days or 14 days?
Do you mean in general or just before I start toying with the search queries?
Essentially, like you launch these dynamic search ads to better understand what some additional queries might be out there that you want to use. When do you kind of check back on it?
I normally check back the next day just because I'm kind of a control freak and I want to make sure there's not a bunch of unqualified stuff coming in. So as soon as there's keyword data available at the search term level, I get right into it. I don't like to let things kind of accumulate if I know it's something that's unqualified. So I'm pretty OCD about checking that first couple of weeks, especially as it's starting to learn. It really takes a lot of work to qualify a DSA campaign and tell it, no, please don't pull keywords about how to set up your email and how to change your password. Please don't advertise on those. So that kind of stuff you can catch right away and don't have to worry about running on those kind of search terms for a week. Just check it as soon as you can. And then I'll probably get more lax as it goes on. So once I feel like I have a pretty good negative keyword set built up, I'll probably only check on it once a week. But I do keep pretty low budgets on these kind of campaigns.
Love it.
And so another use for dynamic search ads is to cover gaps in huge e-commerce sites. So this is an example here that we pulled of a huge e-commerce site with all kinds of different products. And this campaign actually has all of the products that we're targeting in search excluded, and it still found multiple products that we had not set up search campaigns for because the website is just too big and the products are changing too often. There's no way to really keep up with that. Obviously, shopping does a really good job of that since you can have an automated feed, but with like regular search campaigns, it's hard to keep up with that. So DSA provides a really good coverage for that. Number 3 is compare time periods. This might seem not like such a hard-hitting feature necessarily, but I think it's really huge, and it's one that I use probably every day. So when I think about features that provide value to me and allow me to improve ROI for accounts, this is a huge one. So I'm perfectly comfortable putting it at number 3. So some of the ways that I use it, I compare time periods with performance changes to help smooth out causes of performance changes. That's a huge one for me. So if I look at year over year or this period for this last 7 days for the 7 days prior or something like that, and I see that there's a huge drop in conversions, especially like if I'm pulling a weekly report or something and I want to know if I can attribute that to a specific cause for the weekly report and something we can optimize to change course on, I'll definitely use this, and I'll not only look at the graphs, like you can see here that it'll graph out whatever KPI you're interested in, whatever metric for their 2 time period, but you can also actually click into all of the metrics and see the specific changes. So I think this is really valuable and it's helped me out a lot in my account management. Another way is to look year over year. I think that every client and every boss is always thinking, like, where are we at this year compared to last year? And you can do that to pinpoint and prove it's needed, or look for stuff that you've done that worked well in the account, and then figure out seasonal trends on new accounts. So this first screenshot in the upper left-hand corner here, that's one where you can see that these specific campaigns that we're pulling metrics for year over year have seen a big conversion volume decrease. So that's one that I would really dig into and try and figure out what's going on there, and maybe try and see if I can increase those conversions again. And then that second screenshot right to the right of that is one where you can highlight new campaigns that you've launched from last year that are bringing in additional conversion volume year over year. And then that last screenshot on the bottom really shows a seasonal trend. So you can see, looking from October to July, October 2014 to July 2015, year over year here, you can see that there's a pretty stark seasonal trend. Number 2 is search audiences. So I really love search audiences. I think there's so many different ways to use it. And if it's not something that you're using on your account, it's a huge area for you to play with, and you'll definitely be able to find a way that works for you in your account that can help improve your ROI. So one way is to increase bids on more qualified previous site visitors. So this is a pretty common way to use remarketing for search. You can just drop a remarketing audience, so maybe for all previous site visitors, or for people who have visited your cart, or people who have visited at least 6 pages on your site, or whatever your remarketing audience is, and then you can just drop that into your search campaign and say you want to increase your normal bids by 8% or 10% or whatever you think is prudent. And what that does is it lets you still advertise for those search keywords in that campaign on regular search terms, so people who haven't been to your site at the normal bid that you've set, but then it also lets you increase bids for people who you know are going to be more qualified. So I generally have like 2 or 3 different audiences in each search campaign with various bid adjustments on them. Another way to use search audiences is to actually make like a separate RLS campaign and use more broad keywords than you would ever normally use. So if you make a separate campaign with keywords, like let's say you are an e-commerce site and you do really well around Christmas, you might build a Christmas campaign for keywords like Christmas gifts, which is probably not a keyword that you'd ever want to bid on for just normal search volumes. But if there are people who have already been pre-qualified through a search audience, then you could do something like that. So the theory behind that would be that they visit your site and they don't buy something, but they get put into your remarketing list. So they later search for something broad like a Christmas gift, and if you show your ad, it reminds them of your website and their experience on your website. And if they're further along in the buying cycle, or maybe you're using a really killer promotion since it's getting so close to Christmas and you need to move inventory, they convert then. So I've seen this be really successful for e-commerce sites.
One of an area that I love to kind of experiment with search audiences myself is tying Google Analytics to your account and then doing like a smart list of greatest likelihood to convert and kind of playing with that audience with either RLSAs or just standard remarketing. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I actually just got into Smart List just like 6 months ago or something like that, started playing with them, and I found that they are kind of hit or miss, but sometimes they really hit, and it's been really fun to play with them. So for this last point on search audiences, a way to use them that not a lot of people think about is if you are a lead generation site, you could exclude your previous converters if a second conversion from a user has no value to you. So if after they fill out your lead form or contact you, if they ever did it again, that provides no value to you in your business, you should definitely exclude previous converters, because what a lot of people do is they will use search ads as kind of like a bookmark almost. So especially with branded terms, it tends to happen a lot. So what you want to do is make a remarketing list for people who have filled out your contact us form or got your thank you page or whatever it is, based on the URL served after converting. And I actually have a case study for this one. We saw really great success implementing this on an account where the client had no value in a second conversion. So comparing 24 days before and after, you can see that we had over 9,000 impressions and nearly 3,000 clicks in each date range, just to kind of verify that this is statistically relevant. We got 10% more conversions at a 21% lower cost per conversion. We got more clicks. We actually decreased our costs and decreased our CPCs. And this was the only optimization made in this time period, just to make sure that the test was really valid. So I'm a strong believer in this working if that's something that your site functions as. So the number one most valuable AdWords feature right now, I think, is scripts. This is something that every conference I go to, it's a pretty hot topic, and anyone talking about it normally has a full room, because I think it's kind of a question mark in terms of how you use them and what they can do for the general PPC manager. And then the more advanced PPC managers are finding really amazing stuff that they can do with it and saving themselves a lot of time. So here's an example of one under kind of the bucket of what kind of scripts you can use in terms of reporting account alerts and housekeeping stuff. So this is one that would send you an email for your monthly budget projections. So this would just kind of go over your accounts and email you projections of where they're going to be, and this should save you time so you don't have to manually do it, and you don't have to go in and try and figure it out for each month. So you just get an email. And here's another one under that same bucket that will send you an alert anytime that there's a large increase or decrease in click-through rate or average position. So you could set that kind of what you consider to be a big increase or decrease, and so what that would kind of alert you to is that there's something going on in your account unusual and you need to check it out. So either it's, maybe a URL is not working, or you have a huge competitor coming into the market space that wasn't there previously, but it's definitely something you need to check out. And then the other way to use scripts is to automate tasks, which I think is a really big area of focus for more advanced users trying to save themselves time. So an example of that is a multi-bidder, and I actually pulled the script like right off of the Google Scripts website, so you could easily go find it. What it does is similar. It's kind of similar in function to the automated rules, but it's just based on a spreadsheet and allows more flexibility and customization than the automated rules do. And I kind of feel like the automated rules are a little clunky to set up and manage, and then this was just a lot easier to manage 100 rules in one spreadsheet. So it just lets you kind of make all the different parameters for when you would change a bid and how you change a bid, which I think if you spent a lot of time setting this up, it'd save you a lot of time in the long run and make sure your account is super tightly managed and probably really impress your client or your boss. Great. Well, that was our 10 tips. Hopefully our 10 AdWords features, there was something on the list that you weren't using that you can start using to help increase your ROI that will prove valuable to you. So I did want to take a second before we get into the question and answer to talk about our PPC retainers. So if you actually need assistance for PPC, we offer ongoing one-time retainers. You can go to this URL to check it out. They put really talented account managers on those. I've done them before, so they're really worthwhile, and it kind of gives you a really deep insight for the next quarter or next year of what to do with your account. All right, live Q&A time. I think Mike will be getting fed all of your questions. You've been tweeting and putting in the webinar chat this whole time. So Mike, do you want to take that?
Excellent. So I know the first question that I did see come through is, how much data is enough data before you change this rule? And they were talking in relation to kind of ad rotation and even things like bid settings. You know, I would say it's hard to, in PPC, it's hard to say like a definite answer for every single use case. It will depend on the overall business, but typically I would say if you're just looking for some guiding principles, about 14 days of data, you usually have enough where it's actionable enough where you see some overall trends and can make some tweaks. But that being said, when you start looking at things like optimize for conversion, it really depends on the volume. So if you have a very large budget, you can make that kind of switch much more easy. When you're looking at like very lean budgets, you may want to give it a couple of months to get a good bevy of data. So without being, you know, I'd love to give you more of a definitive answer, but I think a lot of times 14 days will at least give you some trends. But if you have a leaner budget, you may want to wait up to, you know, 60 to 90 days before you have a good bedrock of data to make some of those calls.
Yeah, I definitely say it's all about volume of data, not necessarily about time periods.
Absolutely. Question number 2 we see here is, do call-only ads bid on the same ad space as mobile text ads with click-to-call extensions? So call-only meaning that you have your click-to-call extension, so that's essentially all they can click. They can't click on the header or any other element of it. Yes, it does go into the same bid auction for mobile. However, the click-through experience is a little bit different. So instead of allowing them, you know, you have a couple options. You can give them the flexibility of clicking through to a landing page that's mobile optimized, ideally, or they could do the click-to-call extension. You're saying that any click that happens in that environment, when they do the mobile search, you want them to start, you know, you want them to pre-populate that number in their phone and ideally dial. So it does go in within the same auction. You're still kind of bidding for hopefully the, you know, there's top 2 slots. And the experience is just different. So you're just not giving them the flexibility to check out your site. I would say from click-to-call, it's more about, I would look at things like your type of business. So that works well for things like emergency repairs. Or if you have a sales staff, you may want to day part that as well. So you wouldn't want someone calling your business when there's no one to actually actively answer the phone. Myself, I like to give them the flexibility to actually check out the website should they have some questions that may not be qualified. But for emergency repairs type services, click-to-call only is a viable option.
Awesome. I think you did a really good job handling that, and I don't have anything to add.
So Amanda, this third question, do you want to take this one?
Maybe. What is it?
Third question. There seems to be 2 schools of thought when building keyword lists. One, build a very large list and whittle it down as you run your campaign. Or 2, build a small list, see what works, and build it out from there. which school do you recommend?
Ooh, okay, I can take this one. So I feel like that is very dependent on your business goals and how much funding you have upfront for your marketing. So I've had clients come in who are very much trying to get results as quickly as possible, and they have lots of money to throw in it, but they don't have a lot of time, and they want to get through this as quickly as possible. In those cases, I say go with a large keyword set and see what works, and that's what we've done, and we whittled it down. But if you come in with, this has to be a profitable venture for me from the get-go, and if I lose money, I'll have to shut it down. I just don't have the funding for it. Or, your funding is only like $3,000 a month or something like that. You definitely want to start with the most quality keyword set and earn your own testing budgets. And I have lots of clients that that's worked really well for, and over time they're able to grow and get as big as they were hoping that they would get. So it's definitely dependent on your business goals. You don't want to start with a huge keyword set and then make yourself go out of business in 2 months, because it's definitely possible.
I completely agree there. Coming from like an SMB background, a lot of times if you went a little too in-depth, you would come back after a month's worth of data and have maybe 1 or 2 clicks, and then you're not really making actionable insights based on your bevy of data. You're kind of going by your gut. You've spread your budget so thin that you don't really have actionable insights as to what's working. But if you have a very large budget, then it seems opportune to cast a very wide net, understand the market quickly, and then iterate.
Yeah, totally agree.
So we have a third question here, a fourth, excuse me. Which bid strategy do you recommend for AdWords search? I currently use a flex bid strategy with first page targeting, but how does this compare to just manual bidding? Amanda, what are your thoughts on that?
So again, I feel like I'm always kind of punking out on these answers because I'm like, well, it depends, but it kind of does depend. So for me, I am employed to do PPC, so I want to be as granular and as efficient as possible, so I do everything manually. And I think that that is a really great idea and a really great strategy if you're in that situation where you have the time to do that. If you don't have the time to do that, be honest and upfront with yourself. If you're managing your own paid search account or what have you, it might not be the best strategy for you to not have any kind of automation going. You just have to be really smart about your automation. So when you say you're having it targeting the first page or even the first ad position, something like that, you just have to make sure you go back and look at that every now and then, at least once a month, to make sure that that's really profitable for you. I've had clients where some of their keyword sets are more profitable on the second page. Definitely first page is where you want to try and get, and top ad positions are always clicked on more, but you just have to figure out what's profitable for you and what's going to work for you. So I think, one, be honest with yourself about how much time you have and the kind of detail that you can get into with your skill level, and then 2, just make sure whatever strategy you're using, if you do go with automation, is being checked on regularly.
Yeah, so I've seen some of the automation pieces, like enhanced CPC, I've seen work phenomenally. I've also seen it take a nosedive as well. So as Amanda kind of cautioned, I think it's really about setting an expectation for yourself to go back and check and see how it's been performing. I think manual, if you have that, the philosophy where you're managing it out of very smart ways in kind of spreadsheet form, does probably the best. That being said, if you just don't simply have the time, playing around with some either a flexible bid strategy or something like enhanced CPC, it's just all about going back and seeing, and then using what Amanda showed before, the compare results, where you're comparing 2 time periods and seeing if it had a positive or negative impact. We have one more question here, and I'm happy to take it. Question number 5: What's your method of consolidating and managing A/B test results and optimization? Much like Amanda cautions here, it really depends on the scope, like the budget and what you're looking at. I think going into A/B tests, though, you definitely want to make sure that you're isolating all the variables, that you're really thinking through, like, what is my hypothesis? What do I think is my expected outcome? When should I check back on it? And taking a look at the results. For me, personally, that's where labels often help me a lot of times. So if I'm introducing a brand new special, for example, I might tag those individual ads with that special and see how they kind of work in relation to the variable that's not changing. So that's where you're going to have to kind of make sure that you're tracking these internal. The caution is don't have too many experiments running at one time. You'll have too many variables going on. You won't be able to say at the end of the day, this is what actually had the positive or negative impact. So really, I would just write down what you expect to happen. Make sure that you have a timeline when you want to say for sure this was a champion or it didn't work, and then use that compare results to see how things kind of went. Any perspective there, Amanda?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really good strategy and definitely good advice. At Hanapin, not just on salesy, I just think it's cool. We have this thing called the creative testing cycle where we're super diligent about our ad testing. We think it's super important. So we have this like very kind of step-by-step process that we use where we go on your website and we look at all the call to actions and features and benefits of your site and like by product or by service, and then we list all those out, and then we list possible ad tests, and then we make sure that we're only running, one ad test in an ad group at a time so that it's completely A/B, and then we wait for those ads to get to a point where they're statistically relevant to call it that one's a winner, that one's not a winner, or vice versa. And then we will upload a new ad. And so we're constantly trying to increase click-through rates and make the ad experience better for the users. But I will caution that there's definitely been times where an account that's performing poorly is doing ad testing, and I think that they're being disserviced by that, because if it's performing poorly, that means that 50% of your clicks could be going to an ad that doesn't perform as well. And if you're doing landing page testing, that's especially as important. 50% of your clicks could be going to a landing page that doesn't perform as well as the other landing page. So I think ad testing is super important, but there's definitely times that you want to try and mitigate any losses when you're having kind of an account meltdown.
And then a question around remarketing based on search audience. So the question is remarketing required to do the stuff you mentioned for search audiences?
So you do not have to put remarketing ads on the display network, which is what remarketing is referred to as. You don't have to do that. You do have to place the remarketing code on your website and start collecting cookies into different lists so that you can use those for search remarketing. You don't have to do any remarketing on the display network to be able to utilize those lists, but you do have to place the code.
Excellent. Question 7 here, can you talk about the pros and cons of using existing Google scripts and having someone write custom ones for you, including sources for people who write them if you don't know of any? I think I can take some perspective. I'd love to hear Amanda. She has, I'd say, far more experience in scripts than me. But some of the alert type scripts, those out of the gate, just like in a library, those shared libraries work very well. And you don't have to have much caution about the impacts to your account. When you start looking at some of the bid modifiers scripts, that's where it can get a little bit more complex because it may have unintended consequences. It's not always a one-size-fits-all. The other arena of having someone build them for you, so the harder part is you'll have to find someone that has both the kind of the technical chops, but also knows PPC very well. So some of the more expert PPC people out there are starting to become better at scripts, but I wouldn't necessarily have like a dev or an engineer build one for you because they don't always know the full kind of scope of the what may happen to your account. So I would start at first, if you're kind of diving into scripts, using some of the kind of alerts first that are canned out of the library. Those work very well. If you're starting to get more complex ones, then you want to sit down with an expert in PPC who has some of those advanced skills. I would caution of having like outsourcing it to someone like a dev or an engineer.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. You automatically think scripts, you think, oh, I want somebody who knows JavaScript and someone who's really well versed in coding. So you go after someone like that, and they might not necessarily know all the ins and outs of a PPC account. So you definitely have to find specifically people who are really good at writing AdWords scripts. And I do think that custom scripts are probably going to be more effective for your account, like the multi-vid one that I showed. If you can go in and set all your custom parameters, it's going to be way more effective for you and your account. But in terms of like the alerts ones, those are pretty cut and paste, so they're not going to actually put any changes through your account. You should be fine.
Excellent. And question number 8 here, how do you decide when to use Search Advanced and when to use Display Advanced? Any insight, Amanda?
Search Advanced and Display Advanced. What is that?
I was kind of thinking the same thing. I'm wondering if it's encompassing of all features versus just kind of the standard.
I'm not completely sure what they mean, so I don't know how to answer it. Let's just skip it. I'm sorry. If whoever wrote that, if you want to private message one of us on Twitter, we'll be happy to help you.
Absolutely. So question number 9 here, recommendations on how to find the best keywords. As far as keyword mining is concerned, there's a lot of different tools that can help you out there. Everything from using Google's own tools, their trends tools. There's like one of my favorites is like Uber Suggest that will go through and will kind of mine the different variations. Also looking at your competitor sites, and then using things like potentially like a SpyFu. So there's a lot of bevy of tools to kind of go after, but I would kind of take a look at, I like to do all my keyword research up front, kind of map everything out before I tack my account, but that's my kind of personal preference there. And then how do you kind of tackle keyword research?
So I definitely use the site as the biggest influencer of keyword research, just digging through whatever website, making sure that keywords that seem really valuable or are descriptive are being used. Then also, like obviously AdWords keyword research tool is a pretty good one. Acquisio has one that's pretty good. They're kind of all over the place. And again, I use a lot of DSA campaigns to try and help too.
That was a great suggestion. I love that in your kind of punch list here. We'll take a last one, and then if we missed any of your overall questions, we'd love to follow up. So please, you can tweet at us, and we'll kind of follow up personally. But the last one here is, what is the rule on pausing keywords? Example, pause when keyword costs 2x of your conversion payout. It's hard to say, again, because it's like one of those, you have to look situationally. I think overall you want to look at your average. So are you actually getting a return from your overall account? That's kind of the first arena. Sometimes there are select cases where if I'm looking at total leads or total conversion volume, I might have a few out there that are more expensive than maybe my ideal, as long as my averages are under. But from a general rule of thumb, though, if your keywords are not delivering enough value, especially like in e-commerce, so for Google Shopping campaigns specifically, if it's costing you more than you're actually getting a return for, I do pause those in that case, or I might take some actions to refine it. So whether that's going through search query reports or refining things, but typically, if you're not receiving a return on ad spend from it, and it's been some considerable time since you've launched that individual ad group, I would look to pause.
Yeah,
Amanda, any final thoughts there?
Yeah, and I think that that's really good advice. I would just caution that you might want to kind of take a look at your search funnels as well. There could be times where you have a more top of the funnel keyword that's kind of trickling down like to your branded or something and causing conversion. So definitely check that kind of thing out before doing a lot of pausing of your keywords. And I would also caution that you consider seasonality, because sometimes keywords perform better during certain times of the year if your account is seasonal. So definitely, Mike, your advice was great, and few caveats.
So that's a great caution, Amanda. When you're looking at where it might fit in the funnel, do you typically go to your Google Analytics to find that funnel, or how do you kind of go about looking at where it might be aligned in the funnel?
So you can take a look in AdWords to check that out as well. But I do like the multi-channel funnel report analytics more. I think it's more interactive and it's more encompassing.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, if we missed any of your questions, please tweet at us. We're happy to answer them on more of a one-to-one basis. Amanda, did you have any wrap-up?
Let's see here. I do have a wrap-up. I want to thank people for attending our webinar. I want to tell them to tweet #ThinkPPC. And here are 2 email addresses where you can contact Hanapin and AdStage directly. Marketing@hanapinmarketing.com and marketing@adstage.com. Pretty easy to remember right there. Yep, and I guess that's it.
Thank you, Amanda and Hanapin team. It was a pleasure. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.